The blood on her knuckles wasn't hers. That's the first thing I noticed when Violet collapsed against my doorframe at 1 in the morning, her breath coming in sharp gasps that fogged the November air between us. Her left eye was swelling shut, purple already blooming across the cheekbone, and there were finger-shaped bruises around her throat. But her knuckles, those were split open and raw, like she'd been the one throwing punches. My daughter, 26 years old, shaking so hard I could hear her teeth chatter. She looked up at me with her one good eye and whispered 6 words that turned my blood to ice. He hit me because of her. What do you do when the child you raised, the girl you taught to stand up straight and never take disrespect from anyone, shows up beaten at your door in the middle of the night? Before I dive in, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. And if you enjoy stories like this, please like and subscribe. It helps me keep sharing more. I pulled Violet inside and sat her down on the couch where she used to watch cartoons on Saturday mornings. The same couch where I'd read her bedtime stories when her mother left us, when she was only 7 and didn't understand why Mommy wasn't coming home anymore. Now she sat there with blood on her shirt and terror in her eyes, and I felt something cold and sharp settle in my chest, something I hadn't felt in years. Not since I wore the badge daily. Not since I walked the night streets of this town keeping order. I'm retired now, have been for 3 years, but some things you don't retire from. Some things are written into your bones. I got ice from the freezer, wrapped it in a clean kitchen towel, the blue one with the white stripes that Violet gave me last Christmas. My hands were steady as I pressed it gently to her eye. Hers were still trembling. She flinched when the cold touched her skin but didn't pull away. The house was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and her ragged breathing. Outside, the street lamp cast long shadows through the window, making everything look like a crime scene photograph. I suppose it was. Tell me what happened, I said quietly. My voice came out calmer than I felt. Violet's good eye focused on me, then darted away, ashamed. It was Marcus, she whispered. We got into a fight. About Caroline. The name hit me like a fist, Caroline. Marcus's coworker, the one Violet had mentioned a few times over the past months, always with that edge in her voice, that intuition women have when another woman is circling their territory. I knew Caroline by reputation only, younger than Violet, ambitious, the kind of woman who wore her confidence like armor and her smile like a weapon. He's been distant for weeks, Violet continued, her voice breaking. Coming home late, texting at dinner. I asked him tonight if something was going on. He laughed at me, said I was paranoid, insecure. Then I showed him the messages I found on his phone when he was in the shower. Her words came faster now, tumbling over each other. He didn't deny it, didn't even try. He just got angry, said it was my fault, that Caroline understands him in ways I never could, that I pushed him away by always questioning him. I kept my face neutral, but inside rage was building like a storm system. What happened next? I asked. Violet touched her throat where the bruises were darkest. I told him to get out, that we were done. He grabbed me, shook me, told me I wasn't going anywhere, that he decides when things are over. So I hit him, hard, right in the mouth. I felt something crack. I don't know if it was his tooth or my hand. She looked down at her damaged knuckles. He went crazy after that. Slapped me so hard I saw stars. Threw me against the wall. Kept screaming that Caroline would never disrespect him like this. The ice was melting in my hand. Cold water dripping onto the hardwood floor my daughter had helped me refinish 2 summers ago. We'd spent a whole weekend on our knees with Sanders and Stain, laughing about nothing, just being together. Now her blood was on that same floor, small drops that had fallen from her split lip. I set the ice pack down carefully. Where is he now? I asked. Still at the apartment, she said. Probably calling her. Probably telling her I'm the crazy one. I stood up and walked to my bedroom. Violet called after me, asking where I was going, but I didn't answer. In the closet, behind the winter coats I rarely wore anymore, was a lockbox. I hadn't opened it in months. Inside was my old badge, the one they let me keep when I retired. Detective William Cross, 32 years on the force, 23 commendations, 8 official complaints, all dismissed. A reputation for getting things done when the system moved too slow. I picked up the badge, felt its familiar weight in my palm. The metal was cool and smooth, worn at the edges from decades of wear. I carried it back to the living room. Violet watched me with wide eyes as I pinned it to my shirt, right over my heart where it had always been. "What are you doing?" she asked, fear creeping into her voice now. "Making a phone call," I said. She started to protest, started to say something about not making things worse, but I held up one hand and she went quiet. My daughter knows that gesture, knows when her father's mind is made up. I pulled my phone from my pocket and scrolled through my contacts until I found the name I needed. Vincent Reeves. We went through the academy together 40 years ago. He went private sector after 20 years on the force, started a security firm that handled problems the law couldn't quite reach. Problems that required a different kind of justice. We'd stayed in touch over the years, helped each other when situations called for it. I hadn't dialed his number in almost 2 years, but I knew he'd answer. Men like Vincent always answer when old friends call in the middle of the night. The phone rang twice. His voice came through rough and alert, no sleep in it despite the hour. "William, what's wrong?" I looked at my daughter sitting on that couch, broken and bruised by a man who'd promised to love her, a man I'd welcomed into our family, shaken hands with, shared beers with at barbecues. "He hit my daughter," I said quietly into the phone, "and he's not going to see the consequences coming." There was a pause. Then Vincent's voice came back, colder now, professional. "Give me the details." I told him everything, Marcus's full name, the address of the apartment he shared with Violet, his work schedule, his habits, the name Caroline. Vincent listened without interrupting, and I could hear him typing, already building a file, already making plans. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "How far?" I looked at Violet, looked at the bruises on her throat, the terror still lingering in her eyes, the way she was holding herself like something precious and broken. "Far enough that he understands," I said. "Far enough that every man like him in this town understands." Vincent's response was immediate. "It begins tonight." I ended the call and set the phone down. Violet was staring at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Fear, maybe. Or relief. Or something darker. Something that looked like her mother's face the night she left, when she told me I cared more about the job than our family, that I brought the darkness home with me and let it settle into our walls. Maybe she was right. Maybe this darkness has always been part of me. But right now, looking at my daughter's broken face, I didn't care about the cost. Some things you don't forgive. Some things you answer with action, not words. But before any of that, I needed information. I needed to understand exactly who I was dealing with, because Marcus, the man I thought I knew, had just revealed himself to be someone else entirely. And Caroline, whoever she was, had just become part of a story she probably never saw coming. What would you have done if your daughter showed up like this at your door? Would you have called the police, trusted the system? Or would you have done what I did, reached for something older and less forgiving? I knelt down in front of Violet and took her trembling hands in mine. "You're safe now," I told her. "He'll never touch you again." She nodded, tears finally spilling down her cheeks. "Thank you, Daddy," she whispered. I stood up and looked out the window at the dark street. Somewhere out there, Marcus was going about his night, probably thinking he'd gotten away with it, probably thinking Violet would come crawling back like victims often do. He was wrong about that. Dead wrong. Because what Marcus didn't know, what Caroline didn't know, was that before I was a retired detective living quiet in a small house on Maple Street, I was the man they called when cases went cold and needed heat. The coffee I made at 2 in the morning tasted like ash, but I drank it anyway. Violet had finally fallen asleep on the couch, curled under the afghan her grandmother knitted before the cancer took her. I'd given her 2 painkillers and watched her eyes grow heavy, watched the fear slowly drain from her face as exhaustion won out. Now she looked young again, vulnerable, like the little girl who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms. The bruises looked darker in the dim lamplight. I turned away before the rage could build again. Rage makes you sloppy, and I needed to be sharp. My phone buzzed. A text from Vincent with an address I didn't recognize and 3 words. 1 hour, alone. I knew the place when I pulled up the map. An industrial area near the old railway yard, the kind of neighborhood where security cameras mysteriously malfunction and people know better than to ask questions. I'd worked cases there back in my active years. Drug deals gone wrong. Bodies that turned up in dumpsters. The kind of violence that festers in forgotten corners of every city. It was perfect for what came next. I checked on Violet one more time before I left. Her breathing was steady, deep. The swelling around her eye had gone down slightly, but the bruises were settling in for the long haul. I wrote a note and left it on the coffee table. Had to run an errand. Back soon. Lock the door. Love you. Simple words that didn't capture the storm moving through my chest. I grabbed my keys and my old leather jacket, the one with the reinforced lining I'd had custom made years ago. Then I walked out into the November cold. The drive took 18 minutes. The streets were empty, just the occasional traffic light changing colors for no one, casting red and green ghosts across wet pavement. A light rain had started, the kind that doesn't quite commit to being rain, just hangs in the air and makes everything look smeared. My headlights cut through it as I turned into the industrial park. Most of the buildings were dark, abandoned, their windows either boarded up or broken out entirely. But one warehouse at the far end showed a sliver of light beneath a rolling metal door. I parked and got out. The rain touched my face like cold fingers. I could smell rust and old oil, the scent of places where things are built and broken down. Vincent's black SUV was already there, parked in the shadows. As I approached the warehouse, the metal door rolled up with a screech that echoed off the empty buildings. Vincent stood inside, backlit by harsh fluorescent lights. He looked exactly like he always had. Tall, solid, with iron gray hair cut military short and eyes that missed nothing. He wore dark clothes and work gloves. Behind him, I could see 2 other men I didn't recognize. They looked like the kind of people Vincent kept on payroll for situations that required discretion and muscle in equal measure. "William," Vincent said, his voice flat and professional. "We've got him." My heart kicked hard against my ribs. "That was fast," I said, stepping inside. The warehouse was mostly empty, except for some plastic tarps spread across the concrete floor and a single metal chair bolted down in the center. The sight of it made something twist in my gut. This wasn't an interrogation setup. This was something else. Vincent saw my expression and shook his head slightly. "Not here," he said. "He's at a location nearby. Secure. But before we proceed, I need to know your boundaries." Boundaries. The word hung in the air between us like smoke. I thought about Violet's throat, those finger-shaped bruises, the terror in her voice when she said he grabbed me. I thought about every domestic violence case I'd worked over 3 decades, every woman I'd interviewed who wore long sleeves in summer and makeup that didn't quite hide the damage. Every case where the system moved too slow or not at all, where restraining orders became death sentences and justice arrived too late. "Do you think I went too far in calling you?" I asked. Vincent's face didn't change. "I think you called the right person for the wrong system," he said. One of the men behind him stepped forward. He was younger, maybe early 30s, with scarred knuckles and the flat affect of someone who'd seen things that hollowed out the soft parts. He held a tablet and turned it toward me. "Security footage," he said, "from the apartment building. Time stamped 90 minutes ago." I watched the grainy black and white video. Watched Marcus leave the building, stumble slightly, his hand to his mouth where Violet had hit him. Watched him get into his car. The camera angle shifted. Another feed. Marcus pulling into a parking garage downtown, getting out, looking around. Then a woman approaching him. Young, dark hair, professional clothes even at this hour. Caroline. They embraced. Not the hug of co-workers, the embrace of lovers, familiar and intimate. Then they walked together into a building I recognized. The Riverside Apartments, expensive. The kind of place where people paid extra for privacy and discretion. The footage cut off. She has an apartment there, the younger man said. Lease in her name. He's been paying half the rent for 6 months. We pulled financial records. He moved money from a joint account with your daughter. Violet didn't know. The words landed like punches. 6 months. While Violet was planning their future, talking about maybe getting married, maybe starting a family, Marcus was building a second life with another woman using Violet's own money. Vincent spoke quietly. He's there now. With her. They're celebrating. We have audio. I held up my hand. I didn't want to hear it. Didn't need to hear Marcus laughing about what he'd done. Didn't need confirmation of what I already knew in my bones. Men like Marcus don't hit once. They escalate. Tonight was Violet's throat. Next time it might be worse, might be permanent. The system would give him a restraining order maybe if Violet pressed charges. He'd violate it. They always do. By the time consequences caught up, my daughter might be a statistic. What's the play? I asked Vincent. He gestured to the other man who'd been standing silent in the shadows. The man stepped forward and I recognized him then. Davis Kowalski, former colleague from my precinct. He'd retired 5 years before me, took his pension, and disappeared. Now I knew where he'd gone. Davis nodded at me. No warmth in it, just professional acknowledgement. We're going to have a conversation with Marcus, Davis said. Make sure he understands the situation. Make sure he knows that touching Violet again means consequences he can't imagine. Then we're going to have a conversation with Caroline. Make sure she understands her role in this. I felt something cold settle deeper in my chest. And then I asked. Vincent looked at me steadily. And then Marcus leaves town. New job. New state. We'll make it attractive enough he won't refuse. Caroline loses her current position. We have connections with her employer. She'll find opportunities elsewhere become suddenly scarce. They'll both understand that coming back, contacting Violet, even thinking about her carries a price they don't want to pay. It was clean, efficient, the kind of solution that left no bodies but plenty of fear. The kind of thing that happened in the spaces between legal and illegal, where men like Vincent operated. But something nagged at me. Something felt incomplete. What about accountability, I said. What about making sure they understand what they did wasn't just inconvenient for them, but devastating for someone else? Vincent exchanged a glance with Davis. That's why you're here, Vincent said. You decide how that message gets delivered. The warehouse suddenly felt smaller, the fluorescent lights harsher. I'd called Vincent knowing this might happen, knowing he operated outside the boundaries I'd sworn to uphold for 32 years. But standing here now, faced with the actual choice, I felt the weight of it. Felt the badge still pinned to my chest. Felt my daughter's blood still on my hands from where I'd held her damaged knuckles. What would you do if the system you trusted your whole career suddenly felt inadequate? If the rule book you followed seemed designed to protect the wrong people? I pulled out my phone and looked at the photo that was my lock screen. Violet at her college graduation, smiling wide and proud, her whole future spread out bright and possible in front of her. That future was supposed to include love, partnership, safety. Instead, it included trauma and fear and bruises that would fade from her skin, but maybe never from her mind. I put the phone away. I looked at Vincent, at Davis, at the young man with scarred knuckles who probably delivered messages for a living. I thought about Marcus in a luxury apartment with another woman, using my daughter's money, probably not giving her a second thought now that he'd put her in her place. I thought about Caroline, who knew Marcus had a girlfriend, who didn't care, who maybe even enjoyed being the other woman, the exciting secret. Do they know you have them? I asked. Vincent shook his head. Not yet. They think they're safe, think the night is over and they won. I felt my jaw tighten. Then let's teach them about consequences, I said. Vincent smiled, but there was nothing warm in it. He gestured toward the door. We have a car waiting. Davis will drive. I'll brief you on the way. As we walked out of the warehouse, the rain had picked up, coming down steady now, washing the streets clean or trying to. I climbed into the back of a dark sedan with tinted windows. Davis got behind the wheel. Vincent sat beside me. The young man with the tablet got in the passenger seat. We pulled out of the industrial park and headed back toward the city center, toward the Riverside Apartments, toward Marcus and Caroline and whatever came next. Vincent handed me a file folder. Inside were photographs, documents, detailed backgrounds on both of them. Marcus Webb, 31 years old, works in financial consulting, makes good money, comes from a family with connections. No prior arrests, but 2 complaints from ex-girlfriends that never went anywhere. A pattern. Caroline Dresch, 27, marketing executive, ambitious, engaged once before to a married man. That didn't end well either. Another pattern. People don't usually change, they just find new victims. I closed the folder. Vincent was watching me. Having second thoughts, he asked. I thought about the question. About right and wrong. About justice and revenge. About the thin line between protecting your family and becoming something you can't come back from. Then I thought about Violet's voice, broken and small, saying he hit me because of her. No, I said quietly. No second thoughts. Vincent nodded. Good. Because what happens in the next hour, there's no walking it back. You cross this line. You live with it. I know, I said. I've been crossing lines my whole career. Just usually had a badge and a warrant to hide behind. Tonight I just had a father's rage, and an old friend willing to help me channel it into something focused and final. The city lights blurred past the rain-streaked windows. Somewhere ahead, Marcus and Caroline were about to learn that actions have consequences, that hurting people carries a cost, that some fathers don't call lawyers or cops when their daughters show up bleeding. Some fathers call something older, something that operates in shadows and speaks in languages the law doesn't recognize. We were 10 minutes from the Riverside Apartments when my phone buzzed. A text from Violet. Where are you? I'm scared. My hands tightened on the phone. I started to text back, then stopped. What could I say? What words would make this right? I settled for simple truth. Handling it. Be home soon. You're safe. I promise. But as we pulled into the underground parking garage of the Riverside Apartments, as Vincent pointed to Marcus's car parked in a visitor spot, as Davis cut the engine, and we all sat there in the dark listening to rain drum on the roof, I wondered if that promise was one I could actually keep. The elevator to the 9th floor was silent except for the hum of machinery and the quiet breathing of 4 men who'd done this kind of thing before. Vincent checked his watch. 3:17 in the morning. The hallway would be empty, the building asleep, just Marcus and Caroline in apartment 912 thinking they'd gotten away with something. Davis had a keycard in his hand, the kind that opens any electronic lock if you know what you're doing. I didn't ask where he got it. Some questions are better left alone. The doors opened onto a carpeted hallway, soft lighting, the kind of building where people paid for silence and discretion. We moved quietly. Vincent led, then Davis, then me, then the younger man whose name I still didn't know. At 9:12, Vincent held up a fist and we stopped. He pressed his ear to the door, listening. Then he nodded to Davis. The keycard slid through the reader. A soft click. The handle turned. We stepped inside and my world shifted in ways I hadn't prepared for. The apartment was dark, except for light spilling from a bedroom down the hall. I could hear voices, low conversation, then laughter. Marcus's laugh, the one I'd heard 100 times at family dinners, at birthday parties, when he and Violet would visit and everything seemed normal and safe. That laugh made something violent unfold in my chest. Vincent touched my shoulder. A warning. A reminder to stay controlled. We moved through the living room. Expensive furniture. Wine glasses on the coffee table. Women's shoes by the door next to men's boots. The ordinary debris of two lives tangled together while my daughter bled. Vincent positioned Davis and the young man at the bedroom door. Then he looked at me. A question in his eyes. This was my moment to back out. To let professionals handle it. To keep my hands clean. I stepped forward and pushed the bedroom door open. Marcus was sitting on the bed in boxer shorts, his back to us, phone in his hand. Caroline was in the bathroom, door open, washing her face. She saw us first in the mirror. Her scream cut off when she saw Vincent's hand come up, one finger to his lips, the universal gesture for silence. Marcus spun around. His face went through several expressions in quick succession. Confusion. Recognition when he saw me. Then fear when he understood what my presence meant. "William," he started, his voice cracking. I didn't say anything. Just looked at him. At his split lip where Violet had hit him, already swelling. At his comfortable position in another woman's bed while my daughter slept, drugged with painkillers on my couch. Davis moved past me and grabbed Marcus by the arm, hauled him to his feet. Marcus didn't resist. Too shocked. Too scared. Caroline came out of the bathroom in a silk robe, her face pale. "Who are you people?" she demanded, trying for authority, but her voice shook. "What is this?" Vincent spoke quietly, almost gently. "This is a conversation about consequences, Miss Dresch. I'd suggest you sit down and listen carefully." She looked at Marcus, at me, at the two other men blocking the door. Then she sat on the edge of the bed, pulling her robe tighter. Smart woman. Scared, but smart enough to recognize the situation. Marcus was still trying to talk. "William, listen. It's not what you think," he babbled. "Violet, she's unstable. She attacked me. I was defending myself." The lie came so easily, so practiced, like he'd been preparing it, like he'd used versions of it before. I finally spoke, my voice low and controlled. "Show him." Davis grabbed Marcus's phone from his hand, pulled up the camera roll. Photos of Violet, intimate photos, private moments, but also photos taken without her knowledge. Violet sleeping, Violet getting dressed. Dozens of them, cataloged like a collection. Then text messages to Caroline. Messages detailing his frustration with Violet, his plans to keep both women, his amusement at maintaining the deception. Messages where Caroline encouraged it, found it exciting, called Violet names I won't repeat. Vincent had the same content on his tablet, turned it toward Caroline. Her face went from pale to gray. "This is illegal," she whispered, breaking into my apartment, threatening us. "I'll call the police." I reached into my pocket and pulled out my old badge, let her see it. Then I put it away. "I spent 32 years as a detective," I said quietly. "I know exactly what's legal and what isn't. I also know what the police can and can't do, what they will and won't do. A domestic violence case where the victim is too traumatized to testify, where the perpetrator has money and connections, where it becomes he said, she said. I've seen 1,000 of those cases. Want to guess how many end with real consequences?" Marcus found his voice again, angry now. "You can't do this," he said. "You're retired. You have no authority here. Whatever you think happened with Violet, it was between us. A relationship dispute. It happens. She'll cool down and we'll work it out." The casual dismissal of what he'd done, the assumption that Violet would come back, that violence was just part of the relationship cycle, it made my hands shake. Vincent saw it and stepped between us. "Let me tell you what's going to happen," Vincent said to Marcus. His voice was still quiet, but there was iron underneath. "Tomorrow morning you're going to receive a job offer. Very generous, across the country. You're going to accept it. You're going to pack your things and you're going to leave. You will never contact Violet Cross again. You will never speak her name. If you see her on the street in 5 years, you will cross to the other side and keep walking. Marcus laughed, but it sounded hollow. Or what? You'll beat me up? Kill me? This is insane. Vincent didn't blink. We won't touch you, he said. We don't need to. But the photos on your phone, the financial records showing you stealing from your girlfriend, the 2 previous complaints from ex-girlfriends that we've managed to locate and encourage to file formal statements, all of that goes to your employer, to your professional licensing board, to every contact in your industry. Your career ends, your reputation ends, and if you ever come near Violet again, it gets worse. Much worse. Caroline stood up, trying for defiance. You can't threaten us like this, she said. Marcus has rights. I have rights. We'll sue. We'll prosecute. We'll bury you. The young man with scarred knuckles spoke for the first time, his voice flat and empty. Your employer is Hendricks Marketing Group, he said. Your boss is Richard Hendricks. His daughter is my sister. She committed suicide 2 years ago after her boyfriend put her in the hospital. Richard has very strong feelings about men who hurt women and the people who help them do it. I showed him your text messages tonight. He's already drawn up termination papers. You're done, Miss Dresch. The defiance crumbled. Caroline sat back down hard, her face crumpling. This isn't fair, she whispered. We didn't do anything wrong. We just fell in love. It happens. People grow apart. I felt something break open inside me. Something that had been holding back a flood. My daughter has bruises around her throat, I said, and my voice didn't sound like mine anymore. Finger-shaped bruises where this man choked her. She has a black eye, a split lip. She came to my door at 1 a.m, shaking so hard she could barely stand. And you're talking about love, about fairness, about growing apart. I stepped closer to Marcus, close enough to see the fear in his eyes, close enough to smell the wine on his breath. You put your hands on her, I said quietly. You hurt her because she discovered your lies. You made her feel like it was her fault. That's not love. That's not a relationship dispute. That's assault. That's abuse. And the only reason you're still standing right now is because these men are here to keep me from doing what every instinct in my body is screaming at me to do. Marcus's legs gave out. He sat down hard on the bed next to Caroline. I'm sorry, he whispered. I didn't mean to. It just happened. She made me so angry. There it was, the abuser's refrain. She made me. It just happened. No accountability. No ownership. Just excuses and blame shifting. Vincent pulled out a document, handed it to Marcus. This is a binding agreement, he said. You take the job. You leave the state. You never contact Violet Cross, her family, or her friends ever again. You sign it right now, or everything I described happens starting at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. Marcus's hands shook as he took the paper. Where's the job? He asked. Vincent smiled without warmth. Does it matter? He asked. You don't exactly have negotiating power here. I watched Marcus sign the document, watched his hand shake so badly the signature was barely legible. Then Vincent turned to Caroline. You're going to write a letter, he said, to Violet, explaining your role in this, taking responsibility, apologizing. It won't fix anything, but it might give her some closure. And then you're going to accept that your career in this city is over. You'll find opportunities elsewhere. Far from here. Far from Violet. Am I clear? Caroline nodded, tears running down her face, mascara streaking. This is wrong, she whispered again, but there was no fight left in her. Vincent collected the signed document. Davis took photos of the apartment, of Marcus and Caroline together, insurance policies in case either of them got brave later and decided to renege. Then Vincent looked at me. Anything else, he asked. I looked at Marcus, at this man I'd welcomed into my home, trusted with my daughter's heart, at Caroline, who'd helped him betray that trust for her own excitement and validation. I thought about all the things I wanted to say, all the violence I wanted to visit on them. But standing there looking at their scared faces, their pathetic justifications, I felt something unexpected. Not satisfaction, not even anger anymore. Just tired disgust. You're both exactly what you deserve, I said finally. Each other. I hope you're very happy together wherever you end up. I hope every time you look at each other you remember what it cost, what you destroyed. I hope Violet's face haunts you, and I hope you never, ever hurt anyone else the way you hurt her. Because if you do, I'll know. And next time I won't bring friends to keep me civilized. We left them there in that expensive apartment. Two people who'd built something on cruelty and lies, watching it collapse. The elevator ride down was silent. In the parking garage, Vincent turned to me. "How do you feel?" he asked. "Honestly," I said, "empty. Like I did something necessary but not something good." Vincent nodded. "That's how you know you're still human," he said. "The day this feels good is the day you've gone too far." Davis drove me back to my house. Dawn was starting to break, pale gray light pushing back the dark. The rain had stopped. The streets looked washed clean even though I knew they weren't. Knew the dirt just moved somewhere else, settled into cracks and gutters where you couldn't see it, but it was still there. I thanked them and got out of the car, walked up to my door, let myself in quietly. Violet was awake, sitting on the couch with the Afghan wrapped around her shoulders. She looked up when I came in. Her face was a mess of bruises and dried tears, but her eyes were clearer than they'd been hours ago. "Did you?" she started, then stopped. "I don't know what to ask." I sat down next to her. "He's leaving," I said. "The state. You'll never see him again. He signed papers. It's done." She was quiet for a long moment. "What did you do?" she finally asked. "I protected you," I said, "the way I should have protected you from him in the first place. The way I failed to see what he was." Violet leaned against my shoulder, careful of her bruises. "You didn't fail," she whispered. "I chose him. I didn't see it either." We sat there as the sun came up, as light filled the living room and touched the bloodstains on the hardwood floor that I'd have to clean later. I thought about justice and revenge, about the difference between them, about whether what I'd done tonight fell on the right side of that line. I didn't have an answer. Maybe there wasn't one. Maybe sometimes you just do what you have to do and live with the weight of it. The moral settled over me like the morning light, uncomfortable and unavoidable. Sometimes the system fails the people who need it most, and when it does, you're left with impossible choices. Protection and revenge can wear the same face. The badge I wore for 32 years taught me to follow rules, to trust the process, to believe in justice. But the father in me, the man who raised a daughter alone and promised to keep her safe, that man learned tonight that some promises require breaking other rules. I don't know if I did the right thing. I just know I did the only thing I could live with. And sometimes that has to be enough. Violet's breathing had evened out. She'd fallen asleep against my shoulder, exhausted and broken but safe. I stayed perfectly still, not wanting to wake her, watching the sun climb higher and thinking about consequences. About how Marcus and Caroline would carry this forward. About whether fear was enough to stop people like them, or if they'd just find new victims in new cities. About whether I'd become something dark and irreversible tonight, or if I'd simply been a father protecting his child the only way left available. The questions had no clean answers. They never do. If you've made it this far, I need to know something. Drop a comment and tell me, did I cross a line tonight? Would you have done the same for your daughter, your son, someone you love? Because the truth is, we all think we know what we do in a crisis until we're standing in it. Until it's our child's blood on our hands and the system that's supposed to help feels like a cage made of paperwork and procedures. I don't need your approval. But I need to know I'm not alone in understanding that sometimes love looks like rage, and protection requires crossing into darkness. And if you're still here, if this story meant something to you, subscribe. Because the world is full of stories like this. Stories about the space between right and wrong where real people make impossible choices. And maybe by sharing them, we find our way through together.